Howdy, friends and floor heads. Happy Sunday afternoon for those watching. And just for the record, this little spot here is not a booger. It's me cutting myself shaving. So what we're going to do today is something that I've done for two other adventure sites for Forbidden Lands. And just kind of give my thoughts on how I will plan on running it. What's nice is that you can then go watch me run it live as we get to it. So the current group that I'm running Forbidden Lands for, they just arrived here. So we're going to break it down, talk about what my thoughts are on it, how I'm thinking of attacking it, because what's neat about Forbidden Lands is every GM can attack things differently. These aren't modules, they're adventure sites, and it's something that I really enjoy about the game. But I will start off by saying this is meant for game masters. If you are a player and you anticipate that you'll be playing Forbidden Lands, I highly recommend you just send this video off to one of your GMs that's going to run it for you, and don't watch this because it's going to be full of spoilers. All right, so let's get started. I think the first thing we have, there's so much to cover here. This is a site that's a little bit like the Hollows in that it is full of NPCs, full of potential storylines and conflicts, but you have to, I think, start with the big elephant in the room. So let's open up the NPC and monsters. So for those of you that are not familiar, I am a huge fan of the Foundry VTT. It's what you see most of my games run through, and that's what I'm using here. I'm taking advantage of the cheap as hell module made by Free League. If you've not checked out the Foundry as a VTT, I highly recommend you do. And the marriage between Foundry and Free League is a beautiful one because the modules are cheap and they give you everything you need in order to run the game. So you see here a long list, right, of NPCs and quote unquote monsters. But the first one we have to talk about is Zertorm, or Zertorm, is probably how I'll pronounce it, Zertorm. He's kind of the central character to this adventure site, and he is the son of Zygofer, who is the big bad, and Zygofer's wife, Marte. Now, he lives in the castle at Amber's Peak. He's got a lot of stuff going on there, but he's trying to build an army to, now that the mist has lifted, to fight his father, and fight his father in his new form, which is a melding of his oldest daughter and himself. That, I think, is the central piece of this site, but I gotta tell you, as we start to work through this, you realize that so much can happen, and how you unfold this to your players is wide open. So let me begin with how I sent them here. I had created, there was a spot on the map they were headed towards. I wasn't sure what adventure site I wanted to put there, so I went ahead and created an adventure site. And it was a village. It ended up being an outpost I called it First Retreat. And there was all kinds of craziness going on there. It was purely generated from random tables. And if you go look at episode, I think 6 and 7 of our Forbidden Lands game, you can see how that played out. And originally, there was 2 young teenagers and that were going to be sacrificed to this demon. And there was a whole fight with this demon, and one of the teenagers, one of the kids, was killed. Another one, the woman, or the lady, the young girl, she survived. I gave her the name Vividon, and we went to begin to call her Vivi. You never know when your party is going to latch onto a NPC, and my party did. And she became, because of the great role playing of the players that are playing in my game, she became a really neat character that I thoroughly enjoyed having in the game and just had a lot of fun playing off of them from a role playing standpoint. Now, in the break between them killing the big bad and us starting the next session is when I started figuring out, well, hell, I got to figure out who this little girl is. And I started thinking, you know what? I could tie her to an adventure site. I can make her an adventure hook. And Amber's Peak is a site that I've been anxious to run. It's located here. Let me show you from a world map standpoint. I put it here, right? And you can see just on the other side where I've got the Stone Loon Mines. So I've got Amber's Peak here, and you'll notice that these guys were way up here in First Retreat, and they were kind of working their way up into the ocean, up into this area, which is kind of a dead end a little bit. I wanted to kind of push them down a little bit towards the center here, so I had a little bit more flexibility on where to put adventure sites. So this worked out for me on many, many layers. So what I decided is I was going to make her the daughter of one of the horse clans that lives in Amber's Peak. And she was kidnapped. She was taken to this First Retreat location to be sacrificed. And she would plead with the party and say, can you please take me back home? And you never know if your party's going to jump on it or not. Mine did. And not only that, they kind of fell in love with her as well. And it is, it's really kind of neat. Hey, Nick, how are you? So Nick's question is, Amber's Peak in that location by design, or you can put it anywhere? The answer is, Nick, and what's great about Forbidden Lands is you can put it anywhere. Now, I do spend time, looking at the landscape and the features. So I knew I wanted a river because obviously you can see in this picture, there's a huge river feature. And I wanted it at the foot of some mountains because I feel like that's what's indicative here, but that's not required, right? This could just be, just a small spiky, mountainous feature that could be in the middle of anywhere. But no, that's where I decided to put it, Nick. But to answer your question, one of the things that's great about this game is you can put these adventure sites anywhere. So the party latches onto this NPC, and especially one of them, Sten, who's played brilliantly by Brian. And they say, yeah, we're going to take you home. And she knows roughly where to go. We have some really interesting random encounters along the way. But I used, for some of those random encounters, instead of what was rolled, I decided to go ahead and place some of the adventure hooks that you get in here. So if we come to, let's see here, background. Okay, so every one of these adventure sites has a getting here section, which I absolutely love. And this gives you some ideas on how to potentially direct the party while they're traveling across this hex crawl to get them to your site. So in this case, for Amber's Peak, I didn't use the blood feud. That's something I might use later because I think the blood feud could happen in Amber's Peak, not just to get them outside of that. I ended up using two of these. I used the Dying Wanderer and the Fire Demon. But I started with the Fire Demon. So as they were traveling south, they encountered, they camped overnight and they started a fire. And the Fire Demon, basically the Fire Demon idea is the big bad here, the son of Zygofer, has been experimenting and consorting with fire demons. He's starting to create these fire-based elemental demon type things. And the idea is, let's have one of those demons show up and then they follow the demon, they take him to the site. Well, I didn't need somebody to take him to the site because I had Vivi, right? I had this NPC who was going to tell him how to get there. They're trying to take her home. But I like the idea of the setting of this, which is they're around the campfire and just suddenly this fire demon appears. So as most of the party was asleep and one of them was up to stay watch in the fourth quarter of the day, I unfolded this fire getting bigger and stronger. And then it formed into this, humanoid type figure. And I wanted it to be completely indifferent to the party. And it just starts heading south and it starts walking towards Amber's Peak. They followed it for a little while. In the middle of the night, they realized, you know, this thing doesn't seem to be interested in doing anything with us. It seems to be headed in the same direction we are anyway. We're sleepy. Let's track it in the morning, because it was leaving, you know, a burned trail in the ground. So it was easy to track this monster. So they went back to sleep and they started tracking this monster. The next day, they are following the trail, which also, by coincidence, happens to be the direction Vivi's telling him to go to get to Amber's Peak. And the trail ends in the middle of the grasslands. And that's when I brought in the Dying Wanderer. So they get to this area where the demon just dead ends. And I have there a charred body. And I put a farm tool next to the charred body to hint that this was a farmer. They were able to see the tracks of the farmer that was coming from the other direction up north, you know, headed north from the south. So I had the demon, the fire demon, and the farmer meet. And I don't even know if I know what really happened, other than the demon's gone and the farmer's dead. They then continue heading south after investigating this. They continue heading south. They find the farmer's house. It's obvious that the farmer is not a very good farmer. He has a note on the door saying, there's nothing here to steal. I am out looking for food. So now I dissuade them of the idea that this farmer was looking for this guy, that basically this looked like it ended up being a random encounter. The dude met his fate with this fire demon. Hey there, Cromwell, how are you? Your chat, you say, the bond that they have formed with Vivi can now be used as motivation to direct them any way you need to. GM Gold. I agree, man. Always be open and listen to your table and be ready for them to latch onto an NPC, because a good NPC that is run well by a GM is a fantastic tool. Just be very careful with it, because one, it can potentially be heavy-handed. So don't, just because you listen to your players and realize that they're latching onto this NPC, don't stop listening to them. So don't get too heavy-handed with the NPC. You still want it to be their game, not, we don't want this to be Vivi's adventure, right? Two, be careful with making them a GM player character. Keep them as an NPC. And the distinction there is a player character who is run by the GM is typically a recipe for disaster, because then you're running the game and you're playing the game as a player at the same time. And that tends to pull the spotlight away from your players. It tends to reduce the amount of fun that they have. But no, that Cromwell, I completely agree. I loved how they bonded with Vivi, and it went much better than I ever anticipated. All right, so we used the Dying Wanderer, we used the Fire Demon to get them here. Now, what I had decided is I was going to one of the things I thought was interesting about Amber's Peak is you have two Aslan horse clans that are camping out and living at the foothills of Amber's Peak. One of them is the Quards, and one of them is the Galdane. And it's made very clear in the book that the two are not friendly with each other, which inherently makes things very interesting, right? You've got these two horse clans, and I've always imagined the Aslans, for me in my game, being very indicative of like the what's their faces in Game of Thrones? I can't think of the name of the one that she ends up marrying him, and these huge bronze men and women, these warriors that ride. And in my mind, that's what these Aslans have always been, that came from the West. So you have these two different ones. They don't get along with each other. That's a recipe for gold. And the one thing I knew I didn't want my party to come in here and, just consider both the same. I kind of wanted them to start at least embedding themselves or connecting with one or the other. So with the Quards, the mother of the Quards, or not the mother, the leader of the Quards, I made that, Meridia is her name, I made that Vivi's mother. So now they follow Vivi here. Vivi, is home with her clan finally. She runs to the tent where her mother lives, Meridia, who leads the Quards, and we end the episode with them being thanked by Meridia for bringing home her daughter, a daughter she had assumed was long dead. And we're going to start the next episode with them in this gorgeous tent with Meridia. Now, I have a great opportunity to just lore dump on them, right? So I've got to be careful about that, because I could just have Meridia just say everything, right? But I like piecemealing it out. Plus, I don't know what the party's going to do. I don't know how the party's going to handle this, and I like that, right? I've got to listen to my players and see how they want this to go and what direction they want to go. But for Meridia, her daughter's back. She feels indebted to them. If it comes up, I think that she would be more than willing to give them a horse and a wagon, which I know that the party would like to have. They're having some encumbrance issues. Having a horse and wagon would greatly help with that. So that's something that I've got in the back of my pocket, is that if asked, or if they're leaving, Meridia would say, you know, thank you so much. Here's a horse and wagon as payment. I think she's going to potentially talk about who lives in the castle. And for the Quards, they see him as a champion, right? They even see, there is even now a cult built around this. Dothraki, thank you, Ogre. That's exactly what it was. But you can see him as Lost Rohim as well. See, that's what's great, man, is that, or man, non-gender, right? But that's what's great about this Ogre, is that they give you so many seeds, right? So saying the Aslings are Dothraki versus the Aslings are Rohirrim, both of them work, and the GM can go with it. So I mean, a player could come to any one of these adventure sites with me running it, and Ogre, they could go to it with you running it, and they could be completely different. And that's part of what I love about this. But everybody who's familiar with me knows I'm a fanboy. All right, so I don't know if she'll drop necessarily and talk about the Galdines yet. We'll have to see, right? But I think she will talk about, I already forgot his name. There's so many Z names in here. I think she will definitely talk about Zertome. I've decided that she is aligned with the priest that who is her advisor. So and we'll talk about who he is in a second. He's a very interesting NPC. We're going to say that she also believes that Zertome is a savior of Horn. So she's going to buy into that, right? And that, you know, they might drop on her that he is raising an army, but I don't think I'm going to have her talk about Zygerfer. I think what I'm going to do is talk about the Zygerfer's new form, which is this spider beast where he is melded with his daughter and has become this demon beast of two bodies and multiple legs. And off the top of my head, I can't think of what the name of it is, but let me just quickly see if I can find it. Art, Eye of the Rose, Aftermath. Oh, let's see here. No. Let's see if it's under here, under introduction. Key players, adventure sites. Do we have key players? All right, here we go. Key players. So again, Zytera, there we go. So instead of talking about him being the son of Zygerfer, I think she's going to say he is here. Maybe say he's the son of Zygerfer, but he is building an army to fight Zytera. And I'm going to make it so Meridia doesn't know that Zytera and Zygerfer were one and the same, right? And they've already met Marigal in the form of Dorm in Weatherstone, and he made it clear, you know, that Zygerfer is this great champion who's going to save us from the demons, and you know, because all he wants to do, or all they want to do, is stir up stuff, right? So I'll be interested to see when they talk about Zytera. This is the first time they've heard of Zytera. I don't know if they'll make the connection with Zygerfer, and I don't know what they're going to do with this information. I don't know how they'll feel about the son of Zygerfer being up in this castle. But that's what we'll do. Now, the other player the other NPC that I'm going to bring in here early is this Scalia of Horn, who is a Horn priest and part of the Cord clan. I'm going to make him a very close advisor of Meridia. And he is basically started a cult around this Amber's Peak and this champion that lives in this castle. And that Zertome is going to lead them to, hey, Shane, thanks for the follow, is going to lead them to, ridding the Raven's Land of demons. I'll be interested to see how I play him, Pluckus, because they make a note of him that he's kind of horse-faced and he's mocked a little bit. I don't know quite how I'll play him. I might play him for a little bit of comedy, but I also want it to be scary. But I do want him also, because they mentioned he's an advisor, so he goes into the castle at times, and the players are going to know that he's tied to it. So that's where we set the scene, right? So they're going to come into Quartz Camp. I'm going to have them potentially biased towards the Quartz because of their love of Vivi, who they've latched on to. Meridia is going to be very welcoming. They're going to give them this palatial tent that they can live in while they're here. And then they're going to meet Palacus, right? So where they go next is tough to say, but let's talk about all the different things that can be done here. Hey, Shane, just getting into this game and really enjoy your channel, learning a lot watching your game session. Shane, that means a lot to me. Thank you. It's very kind. I'm having a ton of fun with the system, and please make sure you let me know anywhere in comments as you're playing. I love hearing how other people are running this. All right, so let's talk about the other sites here. So you've got Agraville, right? So hold on a second. For whatever reason, Alexa felt she was activated. Let's talk about Argerville. Agraville is going to be kind of the village area that's between these opposing camps and kind of a middle ground, right? And it's going to be like Argerville has got the inn. It's run by Agor, the seventh cousin, a very interesting character of his own. This is where the farmlands is, where the farms are. This is where the non-Astlings live. And for me, I want the zealots, the army that's being built up, to be isolated to just these two different Astling clans. And I'm kind of envisioning for myself that I want the people that live in the middle, these villagers that live in the middle, these farmers that live in the middle, are here because they've always been here. And in some ways, have lived generations long before this here, and kind of their village has been taken over. So that'll be interesting. Plus you have a central point where you can have conflict between the Galdanes and the Quartz. So that's what I'll do with Argerville. Over here at the Forge, this is a place where, of course, they can, a blacksmith, which they can take advantage of. We'll see what happens there. Not a super interesting point on the site. The horse market. This is where we will see both clans brought together. It's a place where horses are sold. Again, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen there. And then you've got the fishing village itself, right? So as I mentioned, we've got this central area here, a place to stage conflict between them. I think I will have Meridia drop some derogatory comments about the Galdanes. And just so you know, in the book it talks about the Quards are a little bit more civilized. They dress nicer, their tents are nicer, whereas the Galdane are a bit more rough, less uniformed. They consider them true Astlings, whereas they kind of consider the Quards as posers, and that's where some of the conflict is. Whereas the Quards look at them as beneath them, and they are behind and primitive compared to everything else. So all of that's playing out, right? Other things to keep an eye on. You've got the graveyard. Again, nothing really spelled out here as far as what that particular part of the site is. And then we've got the bridge. But let's stay here in the village. I want to go to the events. Let's talk through some of the events that are in my back pocket. I think one that I will have happen relatively early, and I don't know when, right? This is a pacing thing, and it's something that I've been doing as I've been running Forbidden Lands, and it's something I think you should try, which is don't predetermine how everything's going to play out as your players are going and traveling from one location to another, or when they're in an adventure site. Just have a toolbox there. That's what these sites are. These are toolboxes. Be familiar with them, and listen to your players and watch your pace. So if I see them slowing down, if I see them getting stuck, they're not really sure, and they need the world to push a little bit to kind of keep things going and keep the pace going. I think what I'm going to have happen is this concept of the beast. So the beast is that you've got Zertome up there creating, and we'll get into what he's really doing up in the palace, but he's creating these fire demons, and they are unleashing themselves on the village. And they are attacking the farmers, right? This ties to what they've already seen one of these demons on their way here. And they talk here about this boar demon and being hired to potentially kill him. And I think the one thing I was struggling with when I was thinking about this is because I'm going to need them to be basically picked to do something else here a little bit later. So why would anybody in Amber's Peak pick my players as any type of champions or mercenaries or people to take care of things? And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Vivi talk them up, right? So Vivi talks about how they destroyed a demon and killed a Rust brother, and they fought off a fire demon, and she's going to spread word. And I think early on I'm going to make them a little bit of kind of celebrities and in awe here, because they've yet to feel like that, right? They were nobodies at the Hollows, and they were, nobodies at Weatherstone, and they've really been nobodies as they've traveled. But a lot's happened since we've started. They've killed a Rust brother. They've got the Scepter, one of the first, one of the Elven rubies. They've got Rust Bite, so they've got really their second magical weapon now. And I think it's time for them to be looked at as dangerous and as champions and as these great heroes, which is something that probably won't happen a whole lot in Forbidden Lands. So at some point, I'll either have this beast show up, and I can have multiple beasts, right? I can have this happen over and over again, or they'll get hired and be told about these beasts, and we'll see if they take the quest, right? Will you fight off and kill these beasts? Yes, Ogre, you can definitely use the reputation mechanic to do that. I will tell you, Ogre, in my home game and in the game I'm using here, I've really not used the reputation mechanic. And the main reason why is that in both of my games, the system typically says, that the mist has been gone for a year or two. I think say 2 or 3 years is what they say. For good or for bad, and I think I think I didn't fully digest the implication of doing this. I made the mist only gone for like a year or less than a year when my party starts, or when my campaign with these guys started. So as a result, like, nobody freaking knows anybody, right? And so I really haven't used the reputation mechanic, but that might change, Ogre. So I need to read up on it again and make sure I understand it, because things are changing now, and they've gone to multiple sites. Their names are starting to get known. But yes, it's a great mechanic to put in there. So I've got the beast, right? So that could be a whole session of them, hunting down these fire demons. It's tied to the other fire demons. We've got the mystery going on. What the hell's going on? Maybe we start hearing about Zertome up there in the palace messing around with fire magic, and that starts getting some suspicion there. I want that to be a very dark place. I want them to be afraid of what's happening in Amber's Peak. And it'll be interesting to see how I do that. A lot of it will depend on my players, right? Aldaves, I misread the mist thing too, and at the start I said when we started our campaign that the mist was gone for 20 years already. That's interesting, which also gives it a whole different atmosphere, no question. And again, that's what's great about this, is that there's so many different ways to run this. And there's no right or wrong here. And for this to have started, for your campaign to be 20 years after the mist lifted, that's super interesting, because now the demons are a known thing, right? And what's happening here is a known thing, and what's happening, with Zygofer and all of that stuff, could be well in place and be well known. That creates a whole different experience for your players than what my players are going through right now, and I love that. Ogre says, only a year, that makes sense. People would still be hesitant to leave, so word of the hero's deeds not get around much. Yeah, exactly, Ogre. That's what I'm doing. And again, I think I would have done it differently, and if I do this again, I'll probably do it differently. I think I'll make it more what they recommend, which is 2 or 3 years, which is funny, because every time I find myself sometimes, home brewing something and saying, nah, I'm going to do it different, then I find out later, like, oh, that's why they did it this way, because it'd be better. So, the Beast, right? So let's talk about some of the other events here. The Minstrel. Now, here's where they have an opportunity to first meet Marigal, which, if you're familiar with Raven's Purge, Marigal is a central character to all of this. Marigal is in cahoots with Zygofer, but more than anything, Marigal is a troublemaker. This is the trickster, the Loki of this game. Now, they already met Marigal, because they met the Minstrel at Weatherstone. Now, I made the Minstrel at Weatherstone this kind of this androgynous, beautiful male elf type looking thing. I played up the yellow eyes a lot. They're very suspicious of Dalb. That's what they know him as. So one of the things that I'm still working on is, how am I going to introduce Marigal here? I don't want them to be 100% sure that Dalb and Marigal are the same. But I am also okay with them suspecting it, right? So I think Marigal is going to show the yellow eyes, which might make them immediately think Dalb and Marigal are the same, or they might start thinking, what if there's many of these yellow-eyed things, right? And so the form, Marigal's kind of default form is the form I put Dalb in, which I don't know if that was a right call or not. So I've got to I'm going to change Marigal's default form. And I think what I'm going to make Marigal is I'm going to make Marigal an older woman. A beautiful older woman with beautiful golden gray hair. And I don't think I'm going to give her or them some, I don't think I'm going to give them elven features like I gave Dalb. And I don't think I'm going to have them talk about being elven here. So again, we can see, create some mystery and some intrigue around what the hell is going on there. So at some point, this I think is great, the false god, right? So you got yet another NPC, and this is Scalia of Horn. Now, Scalia of Horn is part of the Galdanes down south. And she thinks that Zertome is not some scion of Horn the way that the Quards do, right? She thinks it's full of baloney, and even suspects him of doing bad things. So this is going to create another storyline here, and it'll be interesting to see how the players, which one they latch onto. How they're going to meet Scalia, I am not sure. Now, one thing I played with is when you have these two warring camps, and Vivi's too young for this, I think. I was thinking of setting up a Romeo and Juliet, which is to have a Quard NPC and a Galdane NPC are secret lovers, right? And, have them, late teens, early 20s. They're meeting in secret, and that is just a recipe for some great conflict, some great intrigue. But I don't know who they are yet. I don't know if I'll use this yet. Again, I'll be interested to see when I pull this out, if I do, right? So maybe there's a random NPC acquired that they come across, and I decide that is going to be the the woman or the man that has the relationship with the Romeo and Juliet relationship. I don't know, but I think I'm going to keep that Romeo and Juliet thing in my back pocket. I don't know how and when they're going to meet Scalia, but when they do meet Scalia, it is critical for me for them to be suddenly getting another storyline about what the hell's going on in that castle. And with that comes Gartharm, which is another Quard. And I could have Gartharm be the father of one of these Romeo and Juliets, right? So this is a warrior who not only thinks that Zartome is kind of not this great scion of a horn, but also is convinced that he's imprisoned a Valkyrie, which is kind of this shield maiden of Horn, this great scion of Horn, and he has captured her. And he's holding her prisoner, and that's where all this fire stuff is coming from. So again, another great storyline. And, you know, maybe that turns into we need to go in there. You need to go in there and you need to rescue and free this great shield maiden, this Valkyrie. Now, we know that that it is a fire demon that he's consorting with up in Amber's Creek. But again, another tool that's going to be sitting here for me as a GM that I can pick up and grab, right? So, the big event. Favor of the River Gods. I think I want them to spend several sessions here in Amber's Peak before this happens, because I think this is going to be the end of Amber's Peak as an adventure site, how this Favor of the River Gods plays out. So I might have it talked about a little bit, but very quickly, the Favor of the River Gods is there's going to be this huge ceremony that Palakis wants, and they're going to bring out this great stone that's symbolic of the gift of Horn. They're going to heat it up and put it in a ring of fire, heat up the stone, and then use the river water to cool it down as this huge symbolic rite of for Horn, right? So the giant pearl of Horn and blah, 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 blah. I'll figure out all the religious parts of it later, or I'll just make it up as I go along. And Palakis doesn't know this. This stone orb, this piece of huge stone pearl that he has, is a frickin' dragon's egg. So this routine is actually going to cause the dragon to hatch. So we're going to have ourselves a freaking baby dragon. Pops out of this thing, and guess who shows up? Mom dragon, where the egg was stolen from. And now we're going to have the dragon just, potentially lay waste to Ambers. I love this idea. The cracking of the stone. I'm going to have a ton of fun just having that unfold. And I'll be very interested to see if and when my players catch this, because it's a little Games of Thrones-ish when you think about it. These idea of stone eggs. But very interested to see this. But my Favor of the River Gods event is something that I can pull out at any time. I'm going to try to foreshadow it. But I want there to be a couple sessions, I think, in Amber's Peak, because there's so much other interesting stuff happening in Amber's Peak. And I want to see what my players do in this little mini sandbox. All right. So we've talked a lot about the village. We've talked a lot about how I'm going to handle the Quards and the Galleens. I told you the addition that I put in there of having the Romeo and Juliet relationship as, again, something else I can pull out as an adventure hook. We're going to have them fight off these fire demons and realize that these demon monsters are a problem. I will at some point make it clear that the source of these, whether it be the rumors that they hear about the Valkyrie or whatever, but they're coming from Amber's Peak. Like, shady shit's going on in Amber's Peak. That's what I want these players to decide. Now, what they do with this, I don't know. I want them to go to Amber's Peak, right? I want them to either approach this guy, or sneak in there, or do something along those lines. We'll have to see how it plays out. So let's quickly talk about the other things. So you've got the honor guard of the Quards that are guarding this. And then let's go to the interiors. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening inside of Amber's Peak if they do end up going inside of there. So let's go to scenes. And let's look inside Amber's Peak. All right, so this is the exterior here. Let's look at the interior. Oh. So here's the Amber's Peak. So we start off here in B. Here's the bridge that leads up to Amber's Peak. They are quickly going to find out Amber's Peak is not in good shape. So this wizard sorcerer guy that's the son of Zygofer is just living in a shithole. And I'm definitely gonna play up that piece. So things that I think that'll be significant. Oh, that's interesting. It doesn't have. I expected to see. Oh, that's interesting. There's not notes here. Is there notes on this one? Oh, I expected the rooms to be here. Hold on a second. Usually they have notes with the different rooms. Interesting. That's the legend. Those are the events. What am I missing here? Intro. Where's my breakdown? Okay, here we go. All right, so let's talk about... Interesting. Unless this is listed. Is this listed as a separate... Wow, so they don't have this interior stuff in here. So I'm just going to talk about it. I thought I was just going to be able to read off of that. That's really interesting that they don't have the entries from the book. So this is played out. The interior of Amber Peak is played out in the book itself. And it might be here in the module, and I just missed it. I don't know. I fully expected it to have it keyed up with notes just like everything else, but I don't see that. Again, unless I'm missing something. Let's just make sure I haven't messed something up. Okay, I've got the note layer there. I've got that right. And yeah, no. All right, so here is where the fire demon that he's consorting with is. He's making this pact with this demon to increase his firepower and his fire sorcery in order to prepare himself to fight his father. We might reveal here, if the players haven't already figured it out, or we'll just confirm it, that Zygofer and then the spider beast are one and the same. I really, it's hard to say what I'm going to do here. And the reason it's hard to say is because a lot is going to depend on which of the multiple storylines are there. Do they think this Zartome is a Scion of Horn, is going to be the champion that destroys the destroys Zygofer and saves Ravensland? Is this somebody they're going to want to ally with? Or are they going to question him because of he's creating these demons that are ravaging the lands? And of course, what the Galdines are saying is that he's, full of shit. So it's tough to say what's going to happen as this comes up, but they're going to meet the fire demon. Well, we'll see what happens there when they find her there. I think I might make her a bit of a trickster as well, because she's been kind of been a trickster with Zartome. You've got the Wyvern that Zartome has that he's riding. I don't know what's going to play out here. And I think what I'll probably end up doing is maybe do a follow-up video to this to really see how this goes. But let's do a quick recap. So key points here. One, this is a big location for the main storyline of Raven's Purge. So here we've got the son of Zygofer. He's putting together an army to fight him, and depending on where your characters have been or not been, this could be the kind of the major first point where they start to really understand the storyline. I think I'm going to have the cloak, one of the rubies, the elven rubies, which is the cloak. I think I'm going to have Zartome wearing that. So I might, again, leak that out, that they know that they've heard the legend of these different rubies. We might hint at that he has a ruby. Again, another reason why they should be going into the interior of Amber's Peak. But this is a biggie. I don't want to gloss over what's happening here in the village, because I think the two camps, the NPCs in the camps, the conflicts there, I think are great. I like the idea of my Romeo and Juliet idea of creating really playing up the conflict between the two clans. I'm really going to play into and lean into the village being almost a victim of what Zartome's doing in Amber's Peak. a victim of the Quard and the Galdine conflict. I want the party to really see them as decent people that are just trying to survive, and they're kind of caught in this shit show. I like the idea of them hunting down these demons. I definitely are going to somehow make it clear that the demons, or make them suspect the demons, are coming from inside Amber's Peak. We'll have to see how I do that. And I want the big finale, right? The bursting of the dragon's egg. I'm going to save that for at least 2 sessions, maybe even 3 or 4 sessions, depending on how they latch onto stuff, right? I mean, here's the thing. I don't know what storylines they're going to go with, right? There might be storylines that appear because of what the players say and do and how I lean into some of it. There's storylines that could be happening in this little sandbox that I don't even anticipate yet. So if you're watching this as a recording, go watch my Forbidden Lands actual play and see how this plays out. Excuse me. It's part of the benefit, I think, of these videos that I'm making, is that I'm making this video before I've run Amber's Peak. What I'm thinking of doing. Hey, good seeing you, Nick. Merry Christmas to you, man. You and I'll talk a little bit later. I'll send you a message. But I appreciate you swinging by, man. And this, so just so you know, Nick Westbrook is a real good buddy of mine. And he plays in a lot of my games. And we were supposed to be playing Mothership right now, but one of the players was not able to make it. So this is what I did in replacement for it. But Mothership will be back in 1 too. Oh, Nick, thank you for the gift sub. That's very kind of you. And congratulations to Kapfarka on getting that sub. So the idea here is, and the bits, look at you, Nick. Thank you, sir. The idea here is I walk into this and I treat all of these adventure sites now as toolboxes. I want to understand the players. When I say the players, I mean the NPCs. So who are the personalities, the main players, monsters, and everything that are here. I want to feel comfortable and familiar with the different locations. I want to have a couple ideas of my goals, and I've talked to you about what my goals are. I want to play up the conflict between the 2 clans. I want the villagers to be sympathetic and trapped between all the shit show that's happening here. I want to present multiple accounts of what's happening in Amber's Peak and figure out which one they grab onto. I do want them to go to Amber's Peak, but I'm not going to force them to. And at any point, I'm going to foreshadow the rites of the egg and that this festival is coming up. And that was potentially the big finale. It's also possible that they say, peace out, this is dumb. So, but again, you now have, if you're watching this later, you can now go watch how I actually ran it and how my players actually grabbed onto things and went in there. So I'm going to be wrapping up here in just a moment. If there's any questions for those of you watching live, please drop them in chat. And it doesn't have to be about Amber's Peak. It can be about Forbidden Lands in general, things that maybe you're seeing in my actual plays, or you know, my style of GMing, whatever you want. But please, by all means, drop that in the chat as I wrap up. What you're seeing me using, like I mentioned before, is Foundry. It's my favorite VTT by far. I use the Forge to host it because it is an actual program. It's not a browser-based, but if you host it with the Forge, it becomes browser-based, but doesn't have the limitations of being programmed for a browser. It's a wonderful VTT, and the relationship between Foundry and Free League is amazing. So they've got great modules, not only for Forbidden Lands, but the Basin one is amazing. The one for Alien is amazing. I haven't looked at their other ones, but those are the official ones that they've put out. And the community around Foundry is wonderful as well. All right, so that was a good hour. Hopefully give you an idea of what I'm thinking for Amber's Peak, maybe some seeds that you have in there. If you want to go ahead, if you're watching the recording of this on YouTube, let me know in the comments what ideas you liked. Maybe some of your ideas and maybe your experiences with this. I'd love to hear those. I love hearing how people play this game because it's really, really a sandbox. Shane, all the plans of the Game Master never seem to survive contact with the PCs. LOL. I hope all of this runs well for your game session. Shane, that is 100% true, right? And that's why I tried to be loosey-goosey about this. That's why I try to not say this is going to happen. It's why I keep talking about the toolboxes. And I think that how Eric and the team structure these adventure sites work really well for surviving contact with the PCs. Gives you the setting, gives you some key events, gives you some key players, and you read a site, you get familiar and comfortable with them, have some ideas like my Romeo and Juliet idea, and maybe some goals or some feelings or inferences you want to get across, and then just listen to your players and let them play. If you've got a good table, which I am blessed with, the people that are playing, both that played in my home game and as well as the people playing here on the live stream, are just incredible role players, and they are having a blast, and they do a great job. See what happens. I mean, I gotta tell you, the site I made, First Retreat, it was a throwaway, and it became a major event for my players because of who they are and how they reflected that site and the events in that site back to me. And now I think more than the Hollows, and definitely more than Weatherstone, First Retreat is a true landmark in their journey. And they have decided that this random site that I created is a bit of a signpost for them, where they're transitioning just from a bunch of grubs that are running around Ravensland, seeing what's going on, to suddenly, we're heroes. And it's part of why I'm going to play up the Vivi, making them famous here in Amber's Peak among the villagers and above both clans, because I can see that they like that. And they do it. Yeah, Sidewinder, the site generator in the book is phenomenal for creating sites. All the random tables are really, really good. Another group of designers that I'm a huge fan of is Rowan, Rook, and Descartes, which is the group that puts out Spire and Heart, and they are the masters of random tables. But I think a second place for me is the people at Free League, because I think their random tables and their embracing of randomness, but making it make sense, I think they also do a great job. But if you want to see people that have mastered the art of random tables, check out Spire or Heart from Rowan, Rook, and Descartes. It's a really neat setting about elves, and it's revolution, and it's fantasy, and it's political. It's really neat. They've also been on the podcast. All right, this has been wonderful. For those of you that stuck around and watched me live, it's always great to hang out with everybody. It's great to see a lot of old friends here in the chat. It's great to see some of my new friends in the chat. If you're watching the recording of this, like, subscribe, the whole thing. If you're watching it on Twitch, please give me a follow. I appreciate it. If you're really digging it and you want to help support us, there's two different ways. You can subscribe here on Twitch, or go to Patreon and look up Third Floor Wars on Patreon. You can give me $1 a month, and it makes a huge difference. Cromwell, it's interesting to see how involved the party gets with Amber's Peak. I agree. There's enough material here to last multiple sessions. It could be epic. That Cromwell, I completely agree. This could literally be one session and then they're like, peace out. Or it could be like 7 sessions, right? It all depends on where they go, and I just need to be ready for it. And Ogre, thanks for the compliments. It's great seeing you. And Sidewinder, it's always great talking to you as well. All right, guys, gals, guys, have fun with it. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this, and we'll see you this coming Tuesday for Octung Cthulhu. Take care.